Mr. Shevchenko, you say you broke with Moscow because of the cynicism and hypocrisy of the Russian government and of its policies. Why should we believe you?
I think that I try to prove that I am sincere. And I think I went through the hell to try to believe the Americans to trust me. Out of the blue, a very high Soviet official is coming to the other side, and they tested me through the test, which was most difficult in all my life, I would say. They asked me to cooperate secretly with the CIA to bring the documents which can prove the important documents. And they had the opportunity to check whether it's true or not for a long period of time. And that was something which is really, for me, was a trial period.
But the Soviet Union says that its defectors have personal problems, like drink and other things like that.
No, this is not, it's never been my problem. I've been thinking about the really breaking with the Soviet government for years and years, and approach in a very quiet way the American side, and ask how it could be done, and they just wanted to have a period of time, and rather a long period of time of testing, if they call it testing. Some people call it spying. Some people call it testing. And it was not an emotional decision. I had no trouble with the Soviet government, or I had no trouble in my position as in the United Nations. I was quiet. But still, they wanted testing period. But I think that there was a little bit more there. That still CIA, there was, how to say that on one hand, they wanted to test me, and there was another side of that. They wanted me to stay as much as possible. Because when they discovered, and when I provided initially some information which is so important, they saw that as long as I stay, it could be so important for United States. I understand that, but personally for me it was not only really a risk for my life every day, but I just didn't like to stay anymore.
Now you say you had it made in the Soviet Union, that you had every opportunity at the top of the Soviet ruling class. What did that really mean?
Oh, it means a lot. It means that you have all the privileges in a Soviet Union, which practically you don't need money. You live a life like what they call communism. You have huge apartments in Moscow with the servants. You have what they call dacha, country houses. You don't need to stay like the common ordinary Soviets in lines for food or something. You just receive every week a list of everything which you want, and you pay even less than low price, even the government stores. You have every material benefits, except even belonging to the elite, you don't have a real personal freedom, because you still have to be mouthpiece of the government or represent official views of the government. Your influence to change anything is minimal, even at the highest level of the government bureaucracy. and you have a feeling of frustration, belonging to a new generation in the Soviet Union, to compare with the old guard in the Soviet Union. We wanted some changes. We wanted the system to work and function better than it did before. But at the same time, we see almost no possibility.
But now you were a diplomat. Many people would say that your experience as a diplomat was just the same as a diplomat, say, in Britain or the United States or France. Why should you feel different?
What do you mean?
Well, the definition of a diplomat is a man who goes abroad to lie for his country. Is that not the same for all diplomats?
Oh, but let me tell you that in the Soviet Union is not exactly the same. I was a diplomat, that's true. I represented my country abroad, but at the same time, when I, let's say, been working in the Foreign Ministry, at the same time, I often represented the Foreign Ministry, or been sent by Gromyko to work to prepare a very important thing in the Soviet Union. It's not exactly the same thing in the Soviet Union as in the West when we talk about who is a diplomat or not diplomat, because it's true, you can use this word to describe me as a diplomat, but at the same time, it's not exactly the same meaning for the Soviet Union, since some diplomats of the Soviet Union, they participate in shaping the Soviet policy, not only for outside world, but even participate in the process of or participating in some of the important events in the Soviet Union, like congresses of the party or the plenary sessions of the Communist Party. This is something which is, another side. On one hand, it's true that I was a diplomat, but at the moment when I become a senior advisor, political advisor to Gromyko, I cannot say that Gromyko is just simply a diplomat. He's a politician.
All right, but now Mr. Gromyko is a very considerable figure. He's been in the Soviet Foreign Minister for 40 years. Now, would you say that he actually ran Soviet foreign policy, or is he too subject to the rules of the party, of the Politburo?
He for a long period of time in his life, he actually was just a servant, a bureaucrat in diplomatic service who was just implementing a decision which has been adopted by the Politburo or by the political leaders of the Soviet Union, particularly in the period of Khrushchev time, when Khrushchev had a certain respect for Gromyko because he respected his experience. He considered that it could be useful for him that Gromyko would be in the picture, advising him on some of the things. He could get his advice or reject his advice, but with time, there was more and more time. Gromyko gained a position of real strength, and with I would say that for quite a long time, before it was detected in the West, Gromyko became much more important figure in the process of shaping the policy of the Soviet Union, because he himself become not just simply a foreign minister, but become a major political figure who is respected by other members of the Politburo as a most experienced man in shaping the foreign policy of the Soviet Union.
Say what Mr. Gorbachev is saying about nuclear disarmament or removing missiles from Eastern Europe and Western Europe, is that just hypocritical?
Oh, that is, I don't like to say that it's hypocritical. I would say it's meaningless because since the Soviet Union already deployed so many medium-range missiles, which is SS-20s in the western part of the Soviet Union, and acquired such an advantage. If we talk about in general about the balance of power, that the Soviet Union and Europe in such a position that they don't need anything more. The Soviet Union, with the deployment of SS-20s, actually can destroy Europe in 5 or 6 minutes, and there is no equivalent. Neither in the United Kingdom or in France, there is no weapon system which even been compared with such a sophisticated system which the Soviet Union has. It's not hypocrisy, but you know, it's something which has absolutely no meaning, and I hope even that even Mr. Gorbachev understands that it cannot be bought. We cannot buy such a proposal as to freeze something which already has enormous advantage for the Soviet Union.
But are you saying in that say the campaign for nuclear disarmament in Britain and similar campaigns in other Western European countries are right? Or are you saying they're wrong? Should there be a response to what the Soviet Union has done?
Oh, it's obvious that the response should be done. Unfortunately, sometimes I understand the feelings of some of the pacifist movements. I don't like to say that all the pacifist movement been originated or created by the Soviet Union, but sometimes I wonder and don't quite understand well even why the slogans or some of the criticism of this pacifist movement is directed against the West, and why they adopted exactly something which is a Soviet policy. And here we have a situation when I am absolutely convinced that there is a penetration of the pacifist movement by the Soviet agents. And they are very much, effective in turning the pacifist movements, using the Communist Party in the West, and trying to do propaganda and everything, which is very useful for the Soviet Union.
You have said that Mr. Gromyko himself holds the United Nations in a nihilistic, cynical, and hypocritical view. Has the Soviet Union merely, are you saying to us, the Soviet Union merely sees the United Nations as a spy center?
Yes, that's one of the things is, of course, certainly that the Soviet Union would like to use the United Nations, and particularly United Nations Secretariat, as a spy center. And besides that, of course, it's propaganda at the meetings of the General Assembly or the meetings of the other bodies of the United Nations. But at the same time, I don't like to say that there is no understanding in Moscow that in certain cases, United Nations can play a useful role in certain situations. These certain situations are like, let's say, Cyprus, where the presence of UN observers actually recently, in many years, prevented a bloodshed between the Greek Cypriots and Turks Cypriots.
It didn't work, did it, though, between the Egyptians and the Israelis?
No, it didn't. No, no. I cannot say that it didn't work at all, because even there we had the situation where the wars in the Middle East, both 6-day wars or Yom Kippur war was there, but let me tell you, even in Moscow they understand, and when they come to a situation when they have to arrange a ceasefire or draw a line or something, who else can do that except the representatives of United Nations? For both sides, it would be extremely difficult to find who can do that. And here is still a positive role of the United Nations, which is, I think, been understood by both in the Soviet Union and in the United States.
Mr. Khrushchev said that West Germany had to be convinced it could never hope for reunification. And you have said that propaganda and blackmail would influence pacifist sentiments inside the Federal German Republic. Is that what's going on now, in your opinion?
I think it's going on now. It's because the people in the West Germany, they feel, first of all, threatened by such a close presence of the Soviet troops. And I heard a lot of Germans even telling to me, we don't know what will happen, tomorrow. Soviet tanks are only a few hundred miles from us, and tomorrow they could be there. So the threat, first of all, the threat of the Soviet closeness and a possibility of Soviet move in West Germany, it's something which is always present in the minds in the people in West Germany.
But Mr. Shevchenko, it hasn't happened for 40 years. Why do you think it should happen now?
I didn't say that it didn't happen for 40 years, but it is not a question of for how many years it didn't happen. But this feeling is present in the minds of the people. So the 40 or 50 years, it doesn't matter, but it might happen. So that the fear of the closeness of the enormous Soviet force, which is there, and secondly, which I mentioned in my book also, there is a strong feeling for unification in Germany, and they understand that its key is not in the hands of United States or Europe. It's the Soviets who are keeping the key, whether they're how much, let's say, exchange even of the people between East Germany and West Germany, or what really relations can develop between East and West Germany. It's decided in Moscow. And so that they're looking from this angle also. It's on one hand is a fear of the Soviet presence and possible Soviet even military action, and I regret to say that, but I'm not so sure that even if the Soviets will move there, what would be the reaction in general in the West? We have examples when the Soviets move in many other parts of the world, and actually, besides verbal accusations, nothing happened. And I would, if I were a German myself in the West Germany, and or having this Russian bear present in only 100 miles from me, I also would have quite a fear.
And would you, if you were President Reagan, have precisely the same fear, and did that not dictate what President Reagan has just done in trying to reconcile West Germany and the United States?
No, that is I think that it's important. It's a very important thing to reconcile, and I entirely approve this move. Because I think it could be a kind of a reassurance for the West Germans that the United States mean something. Unfortunately, in the past, both in West Germany and in general in Europe, they lost a feeling that the United States will come even to support in general if something will happen. And I don't think that if we have a present administration in the United States, and the President Reagan, I think, is a person who would take measures. And let me tell you that he didn't hesitate to take some of the drastic measures in some certain part of the world. It was not extremely popular in the United States, let's say, when the United States had to move in Grenada, let's say, but he did it.
So the problem for Mr. Gorbachev is an economic one. He wants to do something about Russia's economy, and he can't do that if he has to spend the money on defense and on Star Wars. Now, what does this really mean? You say in your book, at one stage, the Soviet Union could not afford to give economic assistance both to Cuba and to Vietnam. Is it run on such a shoestring?
Oh, it's quite a strain for the Soviet Union, and you know, they still can afford for the time being, but it cost enormously to the Soviet Union, and there is even growing, increasing frictions, both as far as concern the Soviet-Cuban relations and Soviet-Vietnamese relations, because the Soviet Union, of course, essentially support the existence of Cuba or Vietnam, but they cannot even satisfy all the demands. They cannot entirely take the burden of such enormous burden because there are domestic problems in the Soviet Union. The Soviet leadership is concerned about the domestic situation. They cannot satisfy the demands of the Soviet populations. There are promises, unfulfilled promises of the high standard of living, of abundance of everything, which have been not fulfilled for years and years. It creates it might eventually create a big, serious problem, domestic in the Soviet Union. And the Soviet leadership understand it very well. So that
what is your advice to the West in this situation? Should the West concentrate on arms, or is there another policy like aid to the Third World?
Both. On one hand, I think that the West should pay much more attention to a situation which exists in the Third World, and not to permit the Soviets to act so free in the Third World, and to come in a moment of crisis, which it sometimes happen in the Third World. Let's take an example of Angola, when actually I'm not talking about the Western Europe, but even the United States refused to provide any kind of financial or military aid to any factions
in Angola.
And actually abandoned and gave to the Soviets a free hand to do whatever they wanted. If this kind of the approach would prevail in the West and let the Soviets do what they want, either in Africa or now in Central America, that, of course, only encouraged the Soviets to move further and further, so that here, one thing is focus of the attention should be really to analyze properly the situation in the Third World and to prevent the further Soviet moves. Another one is which you mentioned also, and I would like to stress also that the Soviet respect strengths, and the United States, at least United States, I don't know how much the efforts Europe can do, how much United Kingdom or France can do in this respect, but I think that if United States will, in the United States, the opinion will prevail that the abandon a lot of military programs, even before talking with the Soviet Union, it would show to the Soviet Union a weakness.
What you say in your book is that when there was real panic in the Politburo is when the Chinese frontier troops fired on the Soviet ones on the Azuri River. And the Soviet Union then thought of using nuclear weapons against China. Now, is that at the very root of Soviet policy? Is that fear something that the Soviet Union understands more than anything else?
Yes, that is exactly. They understand that they are very fearful of China, and it was in the minds of some of the military. There is no other solution as to, to teach the Chinese a lesson, as to stop them and to prevent any further deterioration at the frontiers of the Soviet Union. But on the other hand, still, this situation, and which I described, it also shows that the Soviet leadership is a little bit more reasonable than some people in the West think. That still the views of the civilian or of the Politburo, they prove to be a little bit more reasonable than that some of the people who are the military, the military, or want them to come and use nuclear weapons. The civilian leadership, even at that time, at the time of the real fear that something serious, very serious, might happen at the borders, or after the border incidents, which can become really a war, in fact, between China and the Soviet Union. But even at this moment, still, the view that the use of nuclear weapons is something which is insane or absolutely unacceptable risk